like to call the meeting of the Norfolk Advisory Committee to order. First order of business is to take attendance. Kiara Moore. Can you? Good. Jonathan Hurwitz.
Present.
Rob Garrity.
Present.
Mike G.
Hi. Present.
Brian Beachkowski.
Here.
And Joyce Theriault.
Here.
Dave Lutz here. We have a very short memo to our agenda today. Brian, do you have minutes?
I do have draft minutes.
Are they ready to be voted on?
I have not sent them out to be reviewed, but if
We
we're
don't,
comfortable.
I think it was a pretty short meeting. I'm not
It
sure.
was a very short meeting.
I think we're comfortable with, is everyone comfortable with, yeah, okay. You
We
want
deal with that at the end.
We can deal with it at the end if
That
you
would
want.
be appreciated.
Okay, great, fine.
I'm allowed.
The other agenda item is to hear from Rich and Chad on the two planning board articles that are going to come before town meeting in the spring. Before we get started, though, I wanted to make a kind of a statement and sort of ask a question. Traditionally, over many years, the spring town meeting was supposed to be focused on budget matters, and the fall town meeting tended to be the meeting where we dealt with a lot of planning stuff. I'm not asking for our derailment of this at this point. I would like to have the planning board think about that. I'm going to talk to the select board about that as well. It kind of broke down when at one point they decided not to do town meeting in the fall for a couple years, and then they ended up having to add it back because it was not feasible to do all the town's business in one meeting. And then I think over the last 3 or 4 years, the COVID kind of kicked the crap out of our agenda building, or the select board's agenda building, and I think the select board was pulling in a bunch of new members. But I'd like at least for you guys to think about that. If we have a tough budget year like we've had off and on over the last few years, it creates a lot of extra stress on both town meeting, but also on the committee and on probably the selectmen. So I'm just something to consider going forward, is that if you are able to tee stuff up for the fall, and I know there's timing issues and some things need to get done in a timely fashion depending on state requirements on new mandates that they put on towns, but something to keep in mind if you don't mind. Okay? Thank you. There's 2 warrant articles on being proposed by the planning board, and I guess it's up to you guys. Do you want to deal with one at a time and take questions, or just go through them both? There's one on the sign, changes to the sign bylaw, and then there's a bunch of changes to the use table, I guess. I think that one might be the one that we need more time going, because I didn't have time to look at that closely. I read the sign bylaw, but whatever you guys think would make sense, Chad and Rich. And I'm sorry.
So I'll introduce Melissa.
Thank you.
So, good evening. I'm accompanied by Melissa Mayo, who's the associate member of the planning board, and who also is taking out papers to run for the seat, one of the seats on the planning board.
And she's fantastic. So vote for her, please.
Thank you.
And so whatever, I mean, if you want to, whatever you want to go with first is fine. I mean, whatever you want.
Why don't we start with the plan of the sign bylaw changes, because it's been before us in different versions in the past, and I think we're all eagerly anticipating where you're planning on going with this.
So the fun part for me is I'm going to defer a lot of the discussion to Melissa, because so Melissa and Gary Sullivan, who's on the planning board, stepped forward and volunteered to work, to take a look at the sign bylaw, to make some changes to the bylaw, and I've been meeting with them as well on different occasions with the Norfolk Small Business Association. But I'm going to just defer to Melissa, because she's worked really hard, and I don't want to take the thunder from her. So
Yeah, do you want to go through the text part first, and because I think all of the visuals will be helpful to show once we go through the text version.
Sure.
You have it up. I don't know who's sharing. Anyone?
Actually, you know what? Erica, do you have?
Yep, I'm going to give you permission.
Oh, actually, I'm not on there.
On the Zoom?
will say, I wouldn't mind tilting that TV down.
Either tilting it or turning off the slide area.
We can't see half the screen, basically, because of the way the light's shining on it, but
Oh,
does it tilt?
Yeah.
That's just going to move the light up, but, yeah, ooh, there we go.
Awesome.
Almost perfect. Thank you, Rich. Now I can't see Kara, but I'm sorry about that.
So, Erica, if you want to just display it, or I suppose I could zoom in and share a screen too, whatever.
Up to you. If it's easier for you to scroll it or.
here, let me just share
I'm
this
happy
with
to
you
do it
again to
otherwise.
make sure you have the latest. And then you can just,
I'll just jump on the Zoom and then we can.
I don't have my Wi-Fi hooked up. Erica, you know what the Wi-Fi password is for town hall?
For the guest.
Norfolk guest access with spaces.
Spaces and capital.
Oh, you guys are usually at NCTV, right?
Yeah, we are.
Oh, this room is so nice. You'll like
This
it.
is so much better, and these chairs are so much more comfortable.
Very comfy.
I feel very fancy sitting in these chairs.
Unfortunately, this is, I think, the only time we're gonna have this room.
Aw, Really?
Probably, yeah, Wednesdays are a popular night.
All right, so if I- just let me in.
Yep.
and I'll-
While he's doing this, I want to apologize in advance, but I can't be here next Wednesday. It's my daughter's hockey banquet. They don't
We'll talk
consult
about that
me.
afterwards, because Mike can't be here either, so.
Okay.
Or no, you can be here next
Can't see
Wednesday.
that, but
It's the
I can see
following
you.
Wednesday.
That's right, next Wednesday I'm here.
I can be here the following, I just can't be
All
here
right,
next
cool.
Wednesday.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to give you a heads up.
You want to scroll through it, I can. Well, I'll scroll through and you can talk, how's that? So-
Do you think, so I'll ask you guys, so we have a slide deck that I've been updating for a while now, from the beginning, when we started working on this project, so that we could show people visuals and mostly, I mean, we want to be able to show it at town meeting. but-
Yeah.
Do you want to see
Why don't
that
you-
first?
Yeah, that would be
Okay.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm gonna just go and get it then.
Okay. I just shared the latest with you, so you have it right in your email.
My mousepad is failing.
I'm okay, and you? I'm stressed, but I'm good. I'm moving this week, so. I've been flat out from 7:30 in the morning till I got home at 6:30 and got the shower to come. I hear you. It's been crazy. I should be moved in by Saturday, though. So.
Apologize for the technical.
You're
thing.
fine.
I gotta
Let's.
go back to the.
Better you than me. I would have been lost, so.
Not saying you can't change it, but I think the consensus, at least when Blythe was the town administrator, for me, the past few years has been, they like for the bigger things or bigger changes to the town to go on spring meeting, regardless of what they are, because they have always felt, this is not me, but they have always felt it's better attended and it gets
Yeah.
more notice. So I think that is why, a part of the reason as to
That
why they've been doing it
might
that
make
way.
sense, yeah.
But
It's
it's,
just-
you decide. In all
Well,
honesty,
I
that's
don't
your
decide,
choice.
though. It's not our choice.
Okay.
Well, it's your choice to a
The
certain
selectmen set the,
extent.
we can push back on that,
Yeah.
but the selectmen set that,
You
they
can
set
set that, you can
quorum.
say that going forward, this is your expectation.
I mean, a
And-
good example while we do this is the B1 changes that were way too much pension pulled off of what was a bad budget
And
year.
people have a ridiculously small appetite for town meeting these days. I mean, Joyce,
Right.
we used to have like 3-night town meetings. And now they have one
Now they
night and
went-
they get cranky if they're there past 9:30.
Yeah.
So you can't do a
They're
2-hour
spoiled.
budget and then 3 hours on
Yeah.
use tables.
100%.
All right.
No, I get it.
Thank you.
Full screen. There we go. So just to give everyone a little bit of background, the reason for this project, or the reason it was kicked off yet again, because I know it has come in front of you guys before, we had a member of the Norfolk Small Business Association come to a planning board meeting and asked to be on the agenda and was pleading with us to do something with the sign bylaws. And so when we started digging into what the issues were, this business owner had a SWOT analysis done of her business, and the major weakness was the signage, and not her logo, and not, the placement of the sign or anything. It was that they are not internally illuminated, which I know is a big challenge in Norfolk. Some of them don't even have the externally lit, just regular farmhouse lights on them, which could be pretty easily fixed as well. But when we started, then we took it from there. Rich, Gary Sullivan, and I went to the Norfolk Small Business Association meeting, and we found that that one issue was an issue for a lot of business owners, but so were other things. And so then we started kind of peeling back the onion, and then we said, okay, well, we want a comprehensive proposal here to be able to bring forward. And of course, there's a lot of things that we think would be great, in the future, but if they're not needed right now, let's just focus on what's needed right now and what the small business owners are asking for. And so I'll go through those with you. So as it stands today, here's Jen. Jen was actually the first business owner to come to us and plead for help. So she's able to have, what you can have for signage on the outside of your building is surface mount signage. Of course, there are sign requirements and all of that Bob goes through to approve it all. You can't project beyond 12 inches, which is an issue with certain small business signs, which I'll go through in a minute. But for now, you can see it's mostly just surface mount signs, and it can be externally lit, but only with white light and just hanging down on it. And of course, you can have monument signs, which we see in a few different places, Four Kicks and, different places around town. They are very expensive, and of course, a lot of, in the B1, you're probably not going to see this a lot, but on Route 1A or even River's Edge, it's, people do need that. And they can also be externally lit. They cannot be internally illuminated currently. These are, so when I say when I mentioned before projecting signs, so this is kind of what some of the small business owners in general would, this would be nice to have, and it's great for walkability when you're, eventually someday when we have some cute small businesses in the downtown, on that strip over there in the B1, it would be great to have signs like this so that when you're walking by or driving by, you can see the sign a little bit better. The option that we have on the left there, that's just, that's not lit at all. And even with that, that very cute, very small sign, it's not allowed currently. The one on the right, same thing. We would be able to have it externally illuminated, as you see there in that cutting board brand sign. But still, we can't do that until we have the projecting signs approved. This was one that came up quite a bit when we went to the Small Business Association meeting. I did not expect this to be what was going to take over most of the meeting, but it was. And so the business owners were saying, these are inexpensive signs, and it's a great way to just, throw it out on, not necessarily the sidewalk, blocking, people walking by or wheelchairs, but to be able to have it on a mulch bed, have it somewhere near the road.
I just got that sign.
Yeah.
That took me a minute. That's genius.
Thank you, Susan, because
sorry.
I didn't get it at all.
I'm sorry. I that wasn't the point.
I read it, and
but
I'm like,
I read it the first time, and I was like, "Why is that a thing?" Sorry, I just got that. Just announced to the entire town that I'm dumb. It's all right.
Not as dumb as me.
Oh, goodness.
So, I'm sorry.
Great
No,
sign.
no,
Great
no.
sign. Whoever wrote that's a genius.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, hopefully we'll see one of those in town soon. So this one was kind of a gray area. So there were some business owners that would say, I put these out, it's not a problem, no one ever asked me to take them down. And then in other parts of town or, other buildings, probably depending on where the sign is located or whatever it may be, Bob Bullock would tell you they are not allowed.
Do you know if that's driven by passage on sidewalks? Because I can see where that would get complaints, where you wouldn't get it if it was sitting in a mulch.
For sure. So we did factor in ADA requirements, and
Yep.
Rich did that research to make sure that if this does get approved and we can say, you can have this without, this is just approved for business owners. You don't have to come to us every time you want to change
Yep.
the message. It just is what it is, and you can have it as a small business owner. I think every single person at that meeting, every single one of them, anybody that had a brick and mortar building was like, we absolutely need to have those, and we need to know, do we have to take them in at night? Because Bob will tell you that they're not allowed, but he'll also tell you that they're allowed, but they're supposed to be taken in at night. And so I feel like people have different
Clarification.
Yeah. So we're like, well, since we're working on this, let's just clarify it, and we'll put something in the bylaws, and we'll all be done with it. And, I understand Bob doesn't want the signs left out at night. They could blow into the street. They could cause an accident. But let's just put it in writing so we figure out what we actually want to offer, and then offload some of the responsibility from him, who has to go out and, constantly talk to people about these signs. Internally lit signs. So,
Can I ask before we go to this? Did you get a sense of, was there a particular part of town where people were more interested in sidewalk signs? Because Route 1A doesn't make any sense on any of those places, but.
We actually did hear from some Route 1A businesses
Really?
that, yeah.
Well, I would say it's not just for people who are walking, like, for example,
guess.
if you're going into a restaurant, even if you drove to that restaurant, seeing that
Yeah,
sign
I guess I
outside
think
lets
of
you
them
know
as
what's on
sidewalk
special.
signs, but-
So you don't necessarily have to walk by, so I could see them wanting, like,
Yeah.
when you go to a boutique and they're gonna have a sale, that's where they would do it and tie
I
balloons
guess,
to it
okay.
and let you know what's going on.
yep. We had the same conversation at the planning board, and I said, I think I can give you the example of Only Prettier. That's one that I happen to, I like their products, so when I'm driving by, I'm like, ooh, what's on sale?
All right.
And that's on 1A. But, yeah, I think when we're talking about internally lit, I think there are certainly parts of town where that would be more helpful than others. If we're talking about the B1, probably not as helpful as if you're at, over at River's Edge and people are flying by there, or over on 1A and people are flying by there. So this was one where we said, okay, well, is the problem really that we don't have internally lit signs, or is it that your landlord doesn't have the electricity hooked up for you to have, and just a light that can aim on the sign? It sounds like it would be pretty helpful, and there's data to back it up, that, this would help for brand recognition. Obviously, it would help for people that are driving by in the busier areas to be able to see a business. But we were thinking, okay, well, even if they're, maybe we start with, like, these are just small signs. These aren't that. The reason we created this slide deck actually was specifically because we were talking about if it's written just in text, and you're like, well, what does that mean? What does it look like? What are we signing up for if we, as all residents of the town, say we want to move forward with this? So we were like, well, sometimes internally lit signs are not necessarily big and gaudy, and they don't look like Vegas.
I will second that again, because until you just showed this picture, when we talked about this last time, I thought you were talking about like what we have at Linda's Variety, like going straight up, 4 signs in a row on the edge of the street. That's what I pictured in my head. I never would have pictured something like this.
Just
It wouldn't
cute,
have occurred
small,
to me
yeah.
to picture this attached to like their front door. I was just picturing the huge thing outside on the street, like near the
Right.
street. So
Right.
this is definitely a good thing to have at town meeting, to show that you're actually referring to all kinds of signs, including these.
Right, because I think we all go to worst case scenario when you're like, oh, I don't want Norfolk to look like Vegas, or, a lot of people say I don't want Norfolk to look like Franklin, and that's not really what we're going for either. It's just that internally illuminated signs, especially if we say it's limited to white light. If it has to be white LED, and we also can require that it has to be a certain temperature, so it's all consistent throughout town as well.
Does that mean lumens when you say
No,
temperature?
no.
Color temperature.
Color
Color
temperature.
temperature, okay.
But the brightness, we have to have something around that as well. So what we were,
And flashing or non-flashing?
No flashing, yeah.
No flashing.
So yeah, just very simple, has to be white.
I think these are great.
I mean,
I think they actually make your storefronts look cuter. I mean, that's one of the things I hate about downtown Norfolk right now. Not that it's really a downtown, but it doesn't really appeal. It's not very, it's functional, it's just not appealing. It would be much prettier if it was all modern and cutesy like
That's
this.
exactly it. These are more modern. And so, when you have the businesses that we want, which I think if you talk to everybody around here, nobody wants like, the big box, anything. It's these cute small businesses, and then you have limitations that kind of take away from the creativity and the brand awareness. And so we were just trying to, listen to all the small business owners that we have now, and then do a little bit more research with other towns and see what they offer and look at what they're getting for small businesses in their towns, and just try to kind of meet in the middle, not do anything crazy, but just try to meet the requests of the small business owners. This one here, I tried to find one that is attractive. I can tell you that
Good luck with that.
if I were to design this, it would look nothing like that. And I'm happy to volunteer to do that. But this, if we are doing internally lit signs, it opens up the door for something like this.
That's the ones you can program with messages, basically, right?
Correct. So that's something that would be good for the town to say, like, come vote on X day, or like no one knew that the fire station was even going to a meeting. Like the amount of people that I talked to
Where
that
do
had
they
no
live?
idea. Right? I know. But, if they're driving
Yeah.
by and they happen to see it. So this is actually, Rentham has this, and I notice their messages every day driving by. It's just red text. It doesn't look like this. It's not big and blue or anything. It's actually significantly smaller than that, but just the red text across the front. I'm like, oh, their water bills are due, or, whatever it may be.
To back up a little bit, Rich, this is essentially what Bob was trying to get an exemption from the sign law to do, wasn't it?
This is where everything started, to
Yeah.
take off to say, hey.
But it was that kind of sign, if I remember.
Yeah, it was definitely.
This
it
is
was that
it,
kind of
the LCD, the
Yeah.
digital one. And Bob, so we've met with Bob as well to go through all of these
Yep.
slides, and Bob said, oh yeah, we wanted to have something like that, but the feedback was you can't have something for the town and then not the small businesses. And
That's
so we were like,
a very
well,
accurate description of the discussion.
summarized, I'm sure. But yeah, so when we spoke with him, he explained all of that, because I didn't know anything about that. So he gave us a little bit of background on it, and we said, well, and then it's probably good timing, because we have all of this very thorough, extensive research and all of these, the proposals for the small business owners as well.
So, Melissa,
Yes.
this bylaw doesn't seem to do that, though.
Can
Where's
you finish
digital
and then we'll get to
monument
this?
in the bylaw?
Can we finish
Okay,
this and then get to the language? Thank you. Sorry, Rob. I just, the big picture and then dig into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine. And then, so, as I mentioned before, the lighting consistency matters. So if you're driving down, say, for example, the B1, and you see that one sign is in yellow light and the next one is the blue light, technically they're white, but they're not white. One's very cool, one's very warm. So we were thinking in our guidance to, which I'll talk about in a minute, but our guidelines that we'll have for business owners will say, this is what, through a special permit, which is basically what we're proposing, that anything that's internally lit would come through for an extensive review from the planning board. And, we'll have guidelines to accompany the bylaws to say, here's what we would recommend, these are what the signs look like, here's what we would like to see, here's the lighting that you should have, here's the brightness that you should have, and so that they're not just flying by the seat of their pants going to a sign store and saying, I just need any sign. At least now they would have some sort of requirements that they'd be working within. And I was a little ahead of myself. So the business sign design guidelines. So I actually have a draft of that I have a couple of hard copies here that I can pass around to you guys, just so you can kind of see what we're thinking for an accompanying document. In addition to what you see here with the guidelines, or these are basically what it would say in the bylaws. In addition to that, we want to have a document that can be found under Bob's section of the website, where he has other guidelines now for, if you're going to build I saw the other day that he has one on there. If you're going to build a deck, here's how it should be built. Here are the screws that you use, things like that. And so this would basically be that with the examples visually, like what we had in the presentation, essentially. If we can use those brands, I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out with general counsel. Maybe we need stock images. But we have something in the document that explains what we would like to see, what the sign requirements are, the size requirements are, if it's two-sided only. All of the stuff that they basically need. So we're pulling together the visual and also what the bylaw says. And since it would be a special permit, giving some guidance to say, when you come before us, here's how we're going to be looking at this. Here's what we're going to be looking for. And we don't necessarily have to say yes, to a massive internally lit sign, because here's our guidelines and here's our kind of criteria that we approve by. So that would be an accompanying document that we would have on Bob's section of the website, which is where the small business owners would go now to pull their permit. Well, they would go through Bob's office to pull the permit for the sign. So we thought it would make sense to have it there. And so I think that's it for visuals.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry, this may not be directly in your purview, but about a permit for a sign. We charge businesses for that permit. There's a fee involved to get a permit for the sign. Okay.
Currently? Is there something now?
Yeah, for sign permit.
Yeah,
yes.
okay, all right.
Yeah, through the building permit.
And the expectation it probably wouldn't change because it's essentially the same kind of review, or?
Yeah, it wouldn't, I don't think it would necessarily change on the building permit side, but it's a good question.
Is that in the bylaws, the actual amount? Probably
That's
is,
to the
right?
building department, those fees. I'm
Yeah, they're
not
all-
sure exactly, but to your question, one of the things that we did talk about was so for right now, if you were to apply for a special permit through the planning board, which this would be, it's $750. And then on top of that, the ads that would go in the Sun Chronicle, which we need to do, is another couple $100. So it really gets pretty expensive just to
Put a sign up.
apply. So one of the things we talked about is changing the regs in terms of the fees to really
Make it more reasonable.
more reasonable. And we have to do the advertise in the paper, so we're kind of we're locked in terms of those costs. But from an application standpoint, have a more moderate, because that was one of the questions. I mean, that was a concern of the businesses too, that the permitting, what
Cost
those
as much
costs
as the
would add
sign.
up.
Can I ask why do we need to advertise
State law.
The state law,
a
yeah.
sign?
Yeah, because,
That's true across all,
We're issuing a business permit.
but bear with me for 1 second. If we were to say that a permit wouldn't be required, would we then need to, could we grant permission blanket to businesses following these criteria, sans permit, therefore no fee collected and no advertising required?
Go ahead, Ron.
Well, so the bylaw doesn't lay out this stuff. So what they've done is sort of a design review board kind of process for signs.
Yeah.
So you got to come in and show us your shrubbery, and do we like it, yes or no? So you can't do that by right, because they want to be able to say yes to that sign, no to that sign.
Yeah. So where I'm going with all of this, and forgive me because I'm skipping ahead 3 steps, and I think this is wonderful, and I would love everything to be visually appealing and consistent and all those sorts of things, but we're like 12 steps ahead of where we're
Well,
actually at.
that's, I think-
I mean, ultimately, my opinion on the matter is we shouldn't build more hurdles for the few businesses in town to be an attractive place for them to own and operate their businesses. I would rather, forgive me, go nuts, build whatever signs you want, encourage people to come to town, reduce permit fees, those sorts of things. And then when it's a problem, when they're the wrong color temperature and it's not matching, those sorts of things, okay, we're solving problems that were so far away from existing. And my concern with all this is all wonderful because it's much better than what we have now, which is just too oppressive. People can't have any signs. But I feel like we're over litigating this to a certain extent. And if we're going to have expensive fees and, time-consuming process, limitations on what they can do, people are just going to say, screw it. We're just adding, I feel like, more obstacles to encourage small businesses to come into town because everything, including your sign, is going to have this litany of regs that need to be followed.
Yeah, so there are, the research that I've done for other towns, they're equally as restrictive. That being said, I don't know if they're all special permits or not. The reason that we wanted to do it this way was because we thought with the pushback from people in the past, especially with internally lit signs, those were the ones where we were like, well, maybe it would make people feel better if they, in more comfortable approving this, saying, yes, we can allow this, we feel comfortable from a town's perspective, if they knew that we were going to have to look at every single design for now, And then when we're comfortable with it, say, okay, now I think we're good, people understand, and new businesses coming in will see what's already there, all of these great role models with this great signage. Can we just take the special permit away now? We were kind of looking at it the reverse in a sense.
So now, I think now's time to dig into the details, Rob.
Sure.
If you're interested. But can I ask a quick question before we go any further? What was the, where is it? As I looked and I couldn't find where it was taken out. The SGPA, whatever it is, where you're replacing the review.
Special Permit Granting Authority? That's
Is that what that
SPGA.
stands for?
Yes.
And who was that before this?
Planning board.
Okay.
It still remains.
Okay.
They're just taking
That was
to go to
clear.
one.
Right. They're making it consistent with. Go ahead, Rob.
So can I ask some questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
So to answer my first question, which is the color stuff is going to be in your ultra Veris guidelines. You don't say anything about the blinky municipal signs in the draft I have,
So the municipal signs they're internally lit signs.
but they blink. So in the version I have,
Well,
right, you say no sign shall use flashing and intermittent lights, and that's what those little dots will do. They flash and are intermittent.
So I think maybe I guess technically all light bulbs do though, right? So as long as it's not noticeable to the eye is more what we were thinking, not necessarily how it works technically, if it's blinking really quickly to look like it's a solid color.
It's animated.
You mean like
Those are
moving-
animated signs.
Moving text.
But they're not, they're not animated if they don't change. And I think what they're building here is that if they change, they can only change to show changes in temperature and time, for all intents.
So it's going to have one message for,
Yeah, the welcome, the sign that you used that showed welcome.
And then
It's
every
pretty
gonna
hard
go
to get the
welcome.
word
She's
out.
saying that the sign may work by a bunch of lights at the exact same time blinking, but when you look at it with a naked eye, it
no,
is a
what I was
stationary
thinking
light.
was they're going to be scrolling text. You're not,
Yep.
but so where's that in the bylaw? Because
It's right here.
Do you have it up there?
I sent you the same thing out of my.
I'm looking at it.
All right. Isn't that section 4, the new language in section?
Are you
in section
allowing,
4?
while he's looking for that, are you allowing the town to have different types of signs
No.
for announcement purposes than
No
businesses?
animated signs.
No.
So businesses can also have signs that scroll and the message changes, or they can only have like
will
a
eventually change.
stationary sign that's lit?
I turn it
outside
off
the
and turn it on again.
Technically, the businesses could.
Well, no, seriously.
Animated,
The
if you look up.
sign, oh, sorry.
No, Mr.
We're having
Chairman's
an
out of
argument.
order
She
here.
was answering, I asked a
one
question, so she was answering. Go ahead, sorry.
I don't know if Chad can hear, so do you guys need to finish your argument?
No, we don't.
Okay.
Sorry.
So technically, yes, a business could have that sign. That being said, with the sign size limitations, it would be basically anywhere where you could have a monument sign, you would potentially be able to have one of those signs. That being said, those are so expensive.
Nobody would do it, okay.
Yeah. But to your point, it could happen. And it would only be allowed essentially wherever you could have a monument sign
Okay.
with that size.
Well, I mean, I think that for the most part, people will abide by the bylaws because businesses don't want to waste money. And if they put up a sign that's not allowed and then it gets reported and then they have to take it down, they just
So
wasted
that's
its money.
So in
starting with
terms
just
of, in
Jonathan's
the
question.
copy you have, in number 4 is where we talk about the.
Yeah. So we're having a discussion about what animated actually means. And that's something that you probably want to
Okay.
make sure, because I think we have a difference of opinion on what an animated sign is.
Which
meaning-
means that the people at the town meeting could as well, so we should definitely.
Well, more importantly, we don't, some of us might not want
Oh,
even
sure.
unmoving animated signs. I'm trying to figure out the correct tech.
Well,
Yeah.
I think yeah, we
Go
can-
ahead,
so
Jonathan, sorry.
I guess we would definitely, for sure, we can follow up on that question. I think Bob would probably tell us that, even though the lights may blink there visually from the eye, it's not moving.
No, stop with the blinking.
Yeah,
What I was
no
talking
sign.
about was scrolling text.
Got it.
Because that's
Oh,
what you
no.
see in message boards, is scrolling text.
Otherwise, why have a message board?
Otherwise, yeah, exactly. You can put up a static sign for,
Well, that's what I
we do
thought.
that for taxes are due. We put out a sandwich board that says taxes are due. The only point of doing this is a sign that you can change quickly and
Might have 3
put
different
multiple messages on. We do it at,
It could. Well, this is actually really good because so we wanted to have a preview meeting with all of you instead of coming at the 11th hour And then, and then you say, oh, no, and we have these conversations then. So we still have a couple of months. So it's great to hear all
You don't
of
have a
it.
couple months. 'Cause
No,
we
no,
have to
but-
vote on it in like 5 weeks, so
Sure.
keep that in mind.
So, yeah, that's fair, that's
My
fair.
constant messaging to the planning board of
We
give us
don't
more
like to make
time
decisions
finally
Like
sunk in.
seconds before the warrant's going to print.
And I don't
so-
like that either, so don't you worry.
Go ahead, John.
So I want to ask a specific example, not necessarily hypothetical. Dunkin' Donuts would not be able to have a LED TV for their menu in the drive-through with
Correct.
these regulations.
No, they would.
In the
The
drive-through,
long-
yeah. because
The menu,
Static,
the
essentially.
menu board that you have when you pull in the LCD ones,
Yeah.
that one be okay,
Why would that be okay?
because it's gonna be static, it's not moving.
So but it's only
But
going
it's
to
going to
be.
be changing.
Every,
So, I mean, maybe this is exactly the
often.
question is, a TV screen, an LCD screen, just like this one, showing the Dunkin' Donuts menu on it, they're going to want to rotate it, change it daily. Maybe they're going to have it, while you drive up, flash the special of the day. Like, I don't understand why we would allow an LCD screen and then say you can't change the text on it.
well, it's not, you can't change the text, it's that it can't be blinking. We're
can
trying to
work
make it,
text,
we don't want it
but
to
I
be
think-
distracting to
I
people
think we're
driving
going to have to
by.
drill down on this a little bit.
Yeah.
You guys are going to have to see
Yep.
if there's examples where they, because I would sort of add the addendum to that sandwich boards are going to change every single day, and it's a different kind of a sign, and it's probably a more attractive sign depending on which. I did notice you have standards for the sandwich boards, because some of them are pretty hideous.
So I think we'll speak to Bob in terms of interpretation of the moving around. I mean, like changing copy.
The other thing is
Yeah.
Bob is going to retire at some point in the future,
Well,
so
no,
we
I
need to
get-
make
I
sure
get
it's in the
that.
bylaw.
I get that.
It is interesting to me that Bob would like the town to have an animated sign that can have little dancing people run across, because he's talked about message boards like this before. He's talked about message boards with changing messages and
Yeah.
multiple messages. And then, and the signboard for the town, for the businesses is like you have to be in nice cursive and it has to be Palmer and it has to be very pretty and it can only be black on white or, maybe mauve. Maybe we'll let mauve, so like the businesses have to run through these hoops and have appropriately, beautiful signs and the town can have this flashy thing which
Well,
makes us look like
Town
Vegas.
can't have anything different than anyone else who wants
Yes,
a
they-
sandwich board.
He's talking about the bill that
talking
was
about
brought
the
before,
monument
the
board
warrant
that-
that
No,
was
but
brought
that's
before
dead.
last
This is not, that bill is
This
no
would
longer
allow
part-
that.
It would allow it for anyone who wanted to buy it, Rob.
So the town can pull out their sign that is the traffic thing that says there'll be a
That's
town.
different 'cause it's mobile,
I
according
understand
to-
it's mobile, but that is, our solution right now is to use a mobile sign that looks worse
Yeah.
than anything else.
But we need to put it places where the mobile, it's very, mobility is the reason it's moving.
So if Dunkin' Donuts puts their menu on wheels.
No,
Yes.
because I'm going to ask Rich, when's
Yes.
Bob going to
In
tell
fact-
LaGrange to
On
get
this,
rid of
I
the
mean, I'm
flashing
not
sign?
joking. What's the difference between the town having the flashy blinking
There isn't
sign on
one.
wheels and then Dunkin' putting their menu on wheels, and if someone complains, they can just, we've just moved it.
The auto place across from the prison had a mobile sign that they were using that was illuminated because it was a mobile sign, and it was there for a while until someone moved it. I don't know why.
Because it's illegal.
But the town has a mobile sign.
There's probably a limitation on how long it can be in the same spot.
It's the question, okay, right, we need to understand that better too, so
So can I speak as the grumpy old man?
you're not grumpy.
I'm already.
I'm old,
So
you're grumpy.
there's a difference in the mobile signs. Okay, if you carry out the mobile sign and you put it out for a thing, like it's town meeting time, bing, you're going to take it back in after town meeting time. These permanent signs, right, that get up, they'll stay up, and they'll find messages to get on them. They'll be, the Boy Scouts will come in and say, can we put a message up about the Jamboree? Can we put a message up about girl? I used to work for DOT. We had signboards, right? Vote for X or, yeah, which got us in trouble with the highway department with the feds because it wasn't a message. But the messages fill the space. So you put something permanent up, it's every hour of the day, it's going to have a message on it. And they'll come back and say, well, the thing that having like one message on it for 12 hours at a time, that doesn't really work because we're not getting out enough messages. So we really need to be able to put scrolling messages.
Well,
and if you like that, that's fine.
I don't. Okay, I think we're going to need a definition of what flashing or intermittent actually means, because I think of those kinds of signs, but I also think of a piece of glass that has a name on it and has a light behind it, which is some of the stuff you were showing us.
I loved what you showed us. I'll vote for that.
But will you vote for the library sign in whatever town that was?
No.
Because tomorrow it'll say, get books
Yeah.
here?
It'll say.
So I think
it'll
what
have a
he's
message.
saying is
But
he
they're
would
both
not,
good points
I think
in a
he would
way,
not
so-
support a sign where the message
But
can be
I
changed.
think, yeah, one of the things is that Jonathan's point, which is a legitimate one, prevents any ability to limit what those signs do. And so if we move in that direction, we would have to make these guidelines
Again,
much stronger.
I don't
in
know
the
who
bylaw.
owns a Dunkin' Donuts here, but every other Dunkin' Donuts drive-through in the world has an LED sign, and they change the menu on that thing all the time, as does every other drive-through. It just seems crazy to me that we would go through all these machinations to say, we're going to allow, by special permit, Dunkin' Donuts to get rid of their externally lit menu right now and put an LED board up, but we're not going to allow you to change it.
I agree with that.
I would just say, why are we going through any of this
I
at
don't
all?
want,
I don't think
to
that's
Rob's
what
point,
we're
I don't want a
saying,
dancing donut on it, but I
Why
want them to
not?
be able to
Why?
say,
It's- why?
6 donuts for $1.
Why? It's why would we say that? If
it's
we're
on-
going to
but-
allow,
but-
if we're going to allow a Dunkin' Donuts in town with a drive-through, it's 2023, we ought to allow everything that comes with it, which I
you want
don't think an LED menu in a drive-through.
In the backside of the
Well, we're not,
building.
but
So-
this is not limited to the LED drive-through menu.
I
It's-
understand.
it's a
I mean,
sign
I guess
bylaw.
that's- but-
The dancing donuts
How
could
many,
be on the
how many
road.
businesses do we have in town total?
15.
15.
that.
Okay, 20, whatever. It's not crazy. Let's say every
I'm
one
not
of them.
talking about the little tiny
Every
ones
one of
no
them
one
built
knows
a Dancing
exists. I
Donut
mean, I'm
sign.
just saying.
It's not going to create light pollution for the rest of the town. It's isolated to this block where we're sitting and 1A, where there's little to no residences.
And
I think it also comes into, sometimes we go down these roads on the advisory board, which I was never able to say before, and I'm saying it now, where we always think of the slipperiest of slopes. And let's be honest, Dunkin' Donuts is the only business in town that's going to have a giant menu that has a dancing donut and it's flashing. Like XL Dance Studio doesn't want that. They can't afford it.
But the guy.
They don't want it.
The guy who has all those yellow block signs next to the Eagle Brook will, as soon as he can afford one of those signs, he'll buy it.
Okay.
Because they've had,
But I mean, I think that we have to remember that we're probably only talking about, of the 25, 30 businesses, whatever the number is, that we have in town, we are only talking about 3 that would even have a purpose for a sign like this. The rest of them are all just places like the dance studio or the car place that wants just a sign that says, come to my business.
I just think that is also a slippery slope in the other direction. It's the same reason I said it has to be in the bylaw, because Bob's going to retire at some
Yeah.
point. I mean, we don't know we don't know what's going to happen on.
I don't think well, I'm not.
So
If I were Bob, okay, which I'm not,
But-
obviously, but changing copy on it to show different things over periodic time is far afield from a dancing donut across the screen. That's.
I don't.
Well, you know what
I
I'm
guess,
saying? So
I guess what I'm
I think
trying to
the
say is
dancing
what I
donut
said
would be
earlier. is-
animated
Go ahead,
or
Mike.
moving.
Yeah. Well, I'm hearing the intent to be what I think what most people agree is the intent of what you're doing. Is we're just sort of finding potential loopholes that someone might find, right? Like, isn't that what we're doing?
And also,
Well, that's
to
what
your,
I told you
to
before we
Rob
started.
mentioned,
Well, no, that's a
I think we're
different
trying to
Rather not have
legislate,
it.
Exactly what
I think
Rather
we're
drive it.
legislating
In the
cheesy.
conversation, I said, watch,
We're
when you
saying
bring
if
it
it's
to the
cheesy, we
advisory
don't
board,
want
they're
it.
going
That's
to
all
bring up
zoning
stuff that
is.
you
At
never
the end of
even
the
thought
day,
was coming,
that's what
that you
zoning is
never
about.
thought of. So I was like, bring it in enough time
You didn't use
that
the
you
word
can make
cheesy.
these changes, because this is what happens every time. I'm so used to this
but it's
kind of
helpful.
conversation.
So I don't know.
I have my one question,
Yeah.
which I ask every time. What is the intent of this change? What are we trying to improve in the town? What is the end state we're trying to get to?
so originally, this wasn't for the planning board to say, we would really like a project for the next 9 months, let's work on this. Because trust me, it was very time consuming.
Right.
But it was that the small business owners came to us. And if you watched that meeting back and saw the pleading, there was actually somebody 2 weeks ago that came to our last meeting.
Yeah.
Same thing, different business owner, also pleading,
Yes.
also about signs.
Yes.
So it's really to help the small business owners and hopefully to attract, and Rob, your point about the pricing for the permits, I totally, you're Rob.
Jonathan.
Jonathan,
Yeah.
you're Rob. Thank you. So your point about the pricing is 100% valid because we don't want to have all these roadblocks for businesses, other businesses to want to come to town. But I think that's really it, is listening to the small business owners that we have now saying what we have doesn't work. My business is actually suffering because of these bylaws. And then we think, okay, well, you could go to Medfield or you could go to Rentham. So let's do research on Medfield and Rentham and see how we differ. So we did that. Let's look at Cohasset, which is gorgeous, and it's somewhat comparable by median income, by population. You know, it's just not located here and they have an ocean. But, you know, things like that where there are people in town that are like, my gosh, Cohasset's the most beautiful town. Okay, well, let's look at Cohasset. They allow this.
Yeah, so the
So-
idea was really one
The small
form of
businesses.
and businesses in general, to be able to have the opportunity to have signs that that visually would help them. So if you look at some of the businesses, the locations without, in some ways, the illumination piece. So if you think about the little plaza across from Four Kicks, it's set pretty far back from Pine Street. And there's a significant amount of people that go to Four Kicks that come in our community and don't necessarily see those businesses across the street because the signage is very poor. It's not lit, so certain times. So the opportunity for the lighting piece is really to provide an opportunity to light some signage so you can see it for the potential customer, consumer. And then some of the other ones that we talked about are, again, for business owners to have an opportunity so people can see them. I mean, I know, like an example with Excel, she had mentioned somebody couldn't even find her business.
Me, I couldn't find her business. I couldn't find her business.
So I love that answer.
It's really
I love that answer, and that the goal is to have businesses compete. And as a town, we continually say we have one form of income for the town, which is property taxes, and we need to diversify that. My question, my response as I read through this is, if our goal is to increase businesses and diversify our tax base and to help our small business community thrive, the way it reads is we're going to do that just a little bit. Why are we doing it just a little bit? And why aren't we more helpful? If the goal is to increase small businesses, why are we not pushing the boundary and reducing restrictions and allowing businesses more freedom in what they do?
Are you talking about signs or about other things?
I'm talking about it all.
Well, then,
I think
we
the
don't have time to deal with that.
But
between now and
signs is part of it.
signage conversation.
We should be consistent.
I think that as, not the advisory board necessarily, but the planning board, whoever's putting forth this article, has to walk the line between, for lack of a better word, going balls to the wall. I'm not really sure how else to say that. I apologize. But, and saying, hey, let's all have whatever we want, because then they're going to see an uproar from the residents who are going to say no. I think you have to walk a fine line between giving the businesses what they need and also appeasing the people who live in the town who don't want it to be all everything. I mean, I think that specifically about the Four Kicks area, Four Kicks has, I believe they have like a monument sign, right? That's lit up. So in all honesty, when you're driving down there, you only see Four Kicks. I don't think it's that they can't have a lit sign. It's that you can't see anything but the Four Kicks sign. So, and they also own the whole property, which is different. That's only going to come into play for people who own the whole property. The people who don't own the whole property, those individual businesses can't put up a monument sign. They can't put up a flashing sign. They can't put up an animated sign. They're only going to be able to put up this 2x5 lit sign on their door, that sticks out, and it's cute. And let's be honest, most businesses want it to look nice. No business says, let me put up the gaudiest, freaking ugliest thing I can possibly find so people hate me. No, they want to attract business. They don't want to annoy people.
You do that with a neon Miller Lite sign if you're a liquor store. Which, by the way,
Yeah.
those shouldn't be there either.
But that's where the bylaw comes in, is what I'm saying, where they're saying, okay, you can have a monument sign, but it can't be scrolling. You can have a backlit sign on your business, but it can only protrude 18 inches and be internally lit with this level of lighting. It can't be a flashing Miller Lite sign, no matter how much you want it to be.
And to Brian and Jonathan's points, I mean, I would love to say, here are all your guidelines, or it's in the bylaw, whatever it is, here's everything you need. You don't need us for a special permit. I just don't think that unless we have some controls coming out of the gate, that this would get signed off.
By whom? The town?
By the town.
So I realize I have perhaps different opinions than the average townsfolk, right? I understand that. But I think everyone is going to be hit in the wallet really hard right now because the assessments just went up, fire station just came in, and school is coming behind it soon. And everyone's property taxes through those three things are going to increase by 50% at least for everybody. So we can go to the town and say, as Brian was saying, the entirety of the town is on the backs of the residents right now. And your property taxes are just going to continue to rise in the same fashion that it has been, unless we start to take more drastic measures to offload some of the tax burden and encourage more commercial development. So we can have a decision. We can have the decision to clutch our pearls over 12 inches versus 18, white light only, the color temperatures. And don't get me wrong, it's beautiful. I'd love to walk around a town with all of those types of things. We're not there yet, right? So we can pose to the town, we can continue to clutch pearls over the minutia of the signs, and it can be animated or it can't, and those sorts of things, right? And some small businesses might be happy, others might be like, it's not what I want. I don't think it's really going to move the needle on encouraging more businesses to come. Or we can take the approach of, let's let's put our foot on the gas, whatever the analogy is here, and let's say we won't have restrictions. We're going to not do it by special permit. We're going to make it cheap for businesses to come. We're going to do more to encourage people to come. And you know what? It may not be visually consistent, but let's get the businesses in now. We'll diversify the tax base, and then in 5 years, let's deal with some zoning bylaws to kind of clean up the signage. That's my opinion. We don't have the business base in town, I think, to be overly concerned with highly restrictive regulations on it at this point.
Go ahead, Rob, but I see we have a business owner who's joined us, and I also wanted to give Chad a chance to weigh in if he wants, for obvious reasons. But go ahead, Rob.
I overestimate the difference a Wild West sign bylaw would have in attracting businesses to Norfolk. You know, when you do a business plan, the fact that it's a $750 permit fee is way behind doors in the area, traffic, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm not willing to, we have enough road signs in the center here that are distracting. Never mind adding more lighting that is distracting while people are on their phones. It's bad enough the way people drive now. If you want to add a bunch more distractions to it, it gets even worse.
Yeah, so I think to clarify though, I know we're getting into this isn't going to move the needle for small businesses to come here. If I were to give you a proposal on how we could get small businesses here, it wouldn't be about the signage. This is to try to help the small business owners that we already have here that we would like to keep here. Yeah. It would be great if we could also have others. And by the way, as far as the pricing goes for the permit, that $750, that's not our fee. That's regardless, that's going to be the fee. Ours would just be, we're hoping $25. So that's not breaking the bank for, so
yeah. I mean,
for just the
I
special
understand.
permit part.
I'm not saying this expecting that if we have no sign bylaws whatsoever, all of a sudden people will be busting down the doors to come in. My point is we should be not making it overly burdensome for the small businesses that are here or the ones that we hope to attract in the future to do small things.
The ones that are here, though, because we did meet with many of them, they are happy with what we put together in the proposal.
I was going to ask that. This has been presented back
Yes,
to
and
this.
Jen is here, actually.
That's where we're going next.
Yeah.
But after Chad. Chad, do you have anything you want to add?
Thank you. You guys can hear me, right?
Yep.
Yep. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. I'm not feeling great. I didn't want to get you guys sick.
We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I just want to say thanks, huge kudos to Melissa. She and Gary and Rich, they did the bulk of all this. And it, like she said, this was like a 9-month process and quite a bit of work. And, you know, we did reach out to the Small Business Association and the community, the businesses in the community to get their feedback. And yeah, this is kind of like like Melissa had said, this is our step one. Let's put a bunch of, let's make some changes, some significant changes, but with some controls and restrictions. And I think we've captured that in here. And I've been taking notes, so we'll definitely look at, you know, what is the definition of animation, a definition of intermittent and flashing, because I think it was Jonathan mentioned, you know, about the Dunkin' Donuts sign. So we'll take that into consideration, make sure that we're addressing that as well, and that we have the proper language in there to deal with that. And then I did want to mention something about moving the needle. I think Melissa summed it up as this isn't that item that's going to move the needle to spur business growth in our town. It's to help the businesses that we do have. And if we want to move the needle to spur business growth, that's something, at least in our downtown in the B1, we need to get that the sewer system improved. And that's a topic for another day. We're not there yet, but we are wrapping up a feasibility study, and then that'll roll into to design and construction. So we're not there. That's just something that's going to be coming. But if we, it's kind of like build it and they will come. If we get the sewer in the downtown, the B1, it opens up opportunities for a lot of growth, because many business owners have said that they're just restricted by what they can build, given that it's controlled septic. So that's just future. I'm just planting a seed for the future on that.
Thank you. I'm sorry, if I can't read your name because it's too small.
Is it Jen? Jen Cody?
It's Jen Cody from XL Dance.
Jen, would you like to speak to us?
Sure. I've been working with Melissa and the planning board on the signage. And I think for us, it's just been very challenging, because even like from the street, people don't even know that our businesses are in town. So people often drive right past me if they're looking for my business and other businesses. I was working with Dean College and their students, and they came and they did a SWOT analysis. And the worst problem with my business was my signage. Right? They felt like my warning thing and the worst part was signage, which was not something that I could control. Right. So that was certainly an area that I was worried about. And then I've also been talking to the people over at Ann's Market, and they have had a lot of trouble just even getting visibility. So we're often paying more rent than our competitors in different towns, and then it's even more challenging for people to find us. So I think backlit signage would be huge, right? Because people would be able to drive right past us, for example, the businesses at River's Edge, and instead of them driving past and not being able to see us, if we had lit signage, then we would certainly be more visible from the street. I've actually had people that said, I've been here for 5 years now, they had no idea I was here. So I think it's important that, I'm right in the center. I think I should have plenty of visibility. So I think it's important that we work together to figure out this issue. Then that would help other businesses move into town, and then I think it would keep people in town as well. So these are just things to think about.
You've reviewed what they've proposed, and you're comfortable that it meets your needs?
Jen, just so you're clear, Jen, it's the presentation that we reviewed.
Yes, I think it's a step in the right direction. And I also worry too, I've been to town meetings, I've lived in town for 10 years, so I am also nervous that it won't pass. I know, it's just one step in the right direction, and sometimes I think those baby steps make the right progress. And I think we also have to make people trust and believe in what we're trying to do as well.
Jen, just to be clear, I believe you have a location at River's Edge and one in the center of town?
Yes, I do.
Are your needs the same for both places? Like, will this bylaw be enough in both locations? Will it serve, do you have a different need for each location, or are they similar?
I think it's simple visibility, right? So if we could add in backlit signage, I feel like it would be huge for everyone. You drive past my building at nighttime and you don't even know it's a dance studio. You know, you don't know what's in here. It almost looks like a house. I know a lot of people, even in River's Edge, they drive past and it almost looks like office buildings. So people have no idea that there's a sandwich shop in there and there's a wonderful, you know, hair salon and there's a coffee shop and there's physical therapy. People drive by and they just think it might just be a doctor's office, you know, or a housing establishment. So I think it's just really important that it's seen as this is commercial, come on in, come do business with us.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody have any other questions for Jen, or?
I'm going to give my 2 cents and then you guys can run with it. I think that we need to be as comprehensive as you and I have discussed this offline. Melissa and I have been friendly for a while, and we've just, you know, had advisory and planning stuff back and forth. And I talked to her about it when she first got started and said, you know, in my opinion, you need to be as detailed oriented in your warrant article as you possibly can. It can be daunting, but if you cover the scope and you see these slippery slope arguments and you see these things in advisory, you can kind of assume this is where it would go once it passes. So if you can be as detailed as possible, you can say, let's have the most consistency that we can possibly have, considering these are all different types of signage and different types of businesses that we're now going to allow. But you know, I spoke to her about like the lumens, the brightness, the color, I'm not sure all the exact wording, but I was like, cover everything. People will then know what they're allowed to have. And I don't know any business that wants to waste money on putting something in that's not allowed just so they have to be told to take it down. They don't want to do that. So if you are detailed in the listing of what's allowed, and you show them examples and say, these are the types of things, here's where it falls, your bases are covered. And honestly, whether right away or even at some point down the road, you can get rid of the whole special permitting altogether, which is one less hoop for businesses to have to jump through and one less thing for them to have to wait on. They don't have to wait for the planning board to meet, present, wait for the planning board to decide and come back 3 months later for their permit. They can just follow the rules and get the kind of sign from the beginning that they want. That would be my suggestion. If you want to do a special permit for temporary reasons to just sort of get the ball rolling, make sure everyone's following the rules, fine. I would like to see it where it's not a special permit. It's just, here are the rules, here's how you need to follow them, be a good person and do what you're supposed to do, or we will come in then and make you take your sign down, and then you will have wasted your money. And I think that is plenty. Not that we don't need, I don't know how much you're going to charge for a special permit. I did the math. I heard somebody say $750. That's a total of $20,000 for the town if every single business comes for a special permit. It's not an incredible amount of money, but I think it can be daunting for the businesses to have to wait for it. I think that's more than the $700 or $300 or $200 you're going to charge is the fact that they have to wait months for it. You guys can only address signage for special permits. You're not going to be able to do every business every meeting. You have other business. It's not going to be able to be the focus.
That actually
so people
is one
are
of
going to
my-
have to wait.
One of
and
my
I don't think they
questions.
should.
There's no, I mean, the permanent granting authority, it's either the planning board or like the ZBA, and neither one of those is going to expedite a review. I mean, you'll expedite it as much as you can, but
Do you meet monthly or bi-weekly?
Monthly.
Yeah, so a business, let's say you can only do one business special permit per meeting and you only meet once a month. That means
Well, that's
you got to
why
get in the
every-
queue, and some business might end up waiting 5 months for an answer.
that's why having the rules written into the bylaw so you can check a bunch of boxes
Exactly.
and then the planning board goes, makes some sense. But if there's a need for an approval, Jonathan, which I think ultimately, I think that
Or maybe potentially,
Sensitive.
just a suggestion, not to create more work, because obviously you are all volunteers as well. As long as what they're presenting, it checks all of the boxes, once a month, once every 2 months, whatever you can do, say, we're going to have a special planning board meeting where we're going to discuss no other businesses except for the special permits for signage for businesses. We're going to perfunctory check all the boxes. Yes, yes, yes. Show me a picture of what you've ordered and what you're planning. Oh, yep, that meets our criteria. You're done, and be done. So that these people aren't waiting 4 and 5 months to get.
Yeah,
the sign
so
approved.
thankfully on the planning board, I don't think, at least since I've been on it, I don't think that would happen. We do all of the business that we need to do every single month, whether we're there 3-5 hours, sometimes, one time. So it all gets done in that one meeting.
Okay. I mean, that's
And
totally
you-
up to you guys. That's how you run your meetings. I'm just saying, as the business owner, I wouldn't want to wait months. I know that when I had to
Right.
go before conservation, it took me almost 6 months.
Yeah, no.
From the start of the process to
want
the
that.
end of the process, and I don't think that's right.
All right. Does anyone have anything else I'm sorry, Kiara? Yes.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I keep forgetting to look at the camera.
Hi. I was wondering if you could tell us more about the towns that you looked at. You mentioned Cohasset, but are there other example towns?
Yeah, there were, I looked at a lot of them. So the ones that were, Cohasset isn't near here. So what I did was, I wanted to look at towns that are kind of similar, to ours, being that, if Jen, for example, wanted to open up another dance studio, and she didn't want to be in Norfolk anymore, where would she go? Probably Rentham, probably Medfield. So I looked at those 2 towns because that's really our competition. And so Rentham, they have that municipal sign that may or may not be flashing. No, so they have that there. They have, they have restrictions, of course. All the bylaws in all the different towns are somewhat different. Of course, there's best practices and standards, but some have more detail than others. Medfield and Rentham were the 2. So Rentham obviously is very close to us as far as population, and also it's just the same with as far as median income, essentially, a little lower. Medfield kind of similar as well. So Medfield does not allow internally illuminated. Rentham does. Aside from that, we're pretty much, with what we have here, if in Medfield, if you wanted to have a projecting sign, you could. Internally illuminated, you cannot yet. And then Rentham that's not the case. You can have pretty much any sign that you want within their bylaw restrictions, which are fairly vague. And then Cohasset, of course, I looked at Cohasset, I looked at Hingham, I looked at Situate. They're all slightly different. I think Cohasset's probably the town that I would say is most similar. When not to us now, it's most similar to when you talk to people about what they would like the downtown to be. They would like that cute village center. That's what Cohasset is. The general income about the same, the population's about the same, great schools, all the kind of stuff you hear about Norfolk. So, and I was actually kind of surprised, honestly, that in Cohasset you can have an internally illuminated sign. You can have your, municipal signs that, and I didn't expect to find that. And I was like, wow, if Cohasset has loosened their strings, looks like it's kind of becoming a trend. I also looked at Hudson, Mass, which of course is not anything like us, but the reason that I looked up Hudson is because they made, a few times actually, the best downtown list in the United States.
It is super cute.
It's so
down there.
cute.
I grew up there.
I like
You
that
did?
town.
Oh.
I went there for Lady Black Tie to get prom dresses, and when I was
okay.
driving through, I was actually noticed that. It's funny you said that. I was like, this is a really cute
Restaurants and the little pubs, it's so cute.
It's a really cute area.
And they're different in a lot of ways, but and also they had infrastructure there that they could reuse, so that's huge for them. But they put a lot of effort forward. Their town planner and their planning board, and they did an amazing job. So when I was looking through the lists, it was actually at the beginning of this process when we first started working on this project. I was like, well, what is a great downtown or a great great business requirements for a town, different things like that. And I found Hudson, and then I started digging into Hudson more, and I was like, well, it would be great. Everybody always says, oh, it would be great to have a date night restaurant. It would be great to have little boutiques. It would be great to have, a little brewery, or, and that's what they have. So not comparable in the median income, not comparable because they're about double the size of us, but in that I just figured because they are noted as one of the best downtowns across the entire country, it was worth looking at their bylaws. They're very, very organized, very descriptive. I don't think there's a special permit, but everything that you need to know is in their bylaws. And it looks amazing.
Which is what I suggested to you. If you can make this as descriptive as possible, you can almost be hands-off, and we'll get the look we want and not have to micromanage the businesses.
Anyone else?
I just want to say thanks for this. So many times things are brought forward that answer a single problem as opposed to doing the research and coming with a comprehensive answer on the way things should be done. So thank you for coming with a comprehensive answer.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you, yes.
Agreed.
Melissa's amazing, just so you know.
Sorry, one more question.
I tried
sure.
to get her for advisory, and she went to planning.
Trying to,
I know we touched on this in various ways, but I'll just ask plainly. Is what's being proposed here have any different limitations or approvals for the town as opposed to a business in the town? Or
Nope.
are both subject to the same
The exact same.
items?
Yep.
Same restrictions? Okay.
that was my
That's
big
good.
bugaboo, and that's
Yeah.
what I was looking for.
In the last meeting, right? We talked about that, and we wanted to make it exactly the same.
Thank you.
Just a quick question, and then I'd like to move on, if that's okay with everyone. Is the fee, the $750 fee, some sort of special permit fee?
Yes,
Could there be a sign permit fee?
yes, that's all, but.
That should be in
I
this.
did make it clear in terms of,
I guess you did, but I guess I didn't.
Instead of a special permit fee,
Right,
instead
not
of
in addition,
$750, do
yeah.
a $150 or $100 or $50 sign permit fee.
it'll be $25 special permit internal illuminating fee. It's the same.
And not the $750.
Correct.
Plus 25, right, just 25.
All right, I
where
think
it's
you
going.
did say that, but I
Yeah.
think we got hung up on the $750.
So
So
what is the $750 then?
it's the special permit fee.
Currently, the
Every special permit you apply for costs $750. So,
And then, of course, there's other
Well, I
fee,
think
on
there are
Bob's side,
additional
because
requirements.
especially if you have internally illuminated, now you need Peter, right, Peter Diamond, to go out and do your review from your electrical. So there are other costs, which is why we want to, at the beginning, make it as low as possible, because we do know that they'll have other fees.
Okay.
thank you.
Is that in the bylaw, the fee?
Yes,
Okay.
that's what I was trying to do when I was screwing up
Oh,
the
well,
computer.
the sign,
The sign's not there yet.
750 we talked about? you
No,
mean?
the fee, the $25 fee, is that in this bylaw?
No.
No, it's not in the bylaw, it's in the planning board rules and regs.
Okay.
There are some fees that are in the bylaws, so that's where I was looking at.
There are some fees,
So,
And
if you're gonna make, I just read them.
Older ones, right. they're
Older ones, not-
Older ones.
All right, so just make
long
sure
as that
that's
doesn't
clear
have to
when,
be
yeah, we
changed.
want to make sure that when it's voted on at town meeting and we wait for the Attorney General's approval, that the fee is already in place when
Right.
the thing goes into effect.
Yes.
that's, at previous planning board meetings, that was the discussion, that, because it'd be them, they can do it at a hearing, and so have it, so,
it may be worth having one of these lines be, this is covered by a special permit lighting fee, which is set by the planning board and is different than the general special permit fee. And that way you can change it as needed as a board, but it is clear to anyone reviewing it that it's not the general special permit fee.
It's not part of that.
yeah, they could, so as part of the
don't.
presentation for town meeting.
No, he's saying put
No.
it as the footnote in the warrant article, in the bylaw that you're changing.
Oh, you mean the warrant?
Say, this is a fee paid for by a lighting, this is a lighting fee separate from the special permit fee,
Yep.
blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
just make it
But don't
number
have the
20.
amount, that way you can change it over time.
Yeah.
But say, there will be a special fee for this.
Go ahead. I thought we were done. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, we're done. Well, we're done. I just want to note, we're an hour and 20 in with just the 7 of us talking about this thing and not repeating questions over and over again, which is what you're going to get at town meeting. So I'm just kind of making Dave's point on if we, do bylaws in the fall and budget in the spring, we have, time to do things instead of this coming up at like 9:30 at night and no one paying any attention to it. Either just
There
vote
is
no
some of
or
that,
yes.
too.
So meaning we haven't even discussed the use table, and how in-depth is that?
No kidding, 21 pages.
Okay, well, I've slept 4 hours in 3 days, so.
Well, then, let's
How
move
long-
on.
Yeah, let's get to that if we're getting to it. I'm
So
in
the other article is a number of changes to the use pages. Now, Rob says it's 22 pages, but that's the whole use table, not the changes.
Are the changes, Rich,
it's in
before we
there.
get started, are these
changes are in
substantive
there.
changes or unsubstantive
The rest of
changes?
the table is there, too.
No, they put it
We
in
are
once.
labeled, we're categorizing them as substantive because,
So we're not talking just grammar, we're talking about a total cleanup? That's a lot for a spring meeting.
Well, Susan, I can answer that. Rich, I can answer
Okay,
that.
thank you, Chad.
So we have 3 articles, and so we previously, the history of this is we brought this to you
Last year.
before the fall meeting, and there was just too many articles. It was too confusing. So we took a step back, and we wanted to streamline it. And I guess the goal of our intention was to create 3 or less than 10 articles that was easy to understand and follow. And the whole point about creating the use table was that all these little bits and pieces were sprinkled around our bylaws, and some contradicted each other and some duplicated each other. And so Bob Bullock came to us and said, look, it'd be great if we could just have one use table that everything references that, and that way it's one clear place to look at, and other towns do this as well. So that was our goal, was to make one use table, make it easy for anybody to find what's allowed, what's not allowed. And then our second goal was, let's make it easy, or try to as much as we can, make it easy to present this so that we can hopefully get this approved. And so we did break it down into 3 articles. And the first article is a substantive change because we're creating the table. And I did ask town council that. I'm like, is it really a substantive change? Because we're not changing any language except for the fact that we're making a table. But because of that, it is a substantive change. So Article 1 is just take all the bits and pieces, whole stock, bring it together in a table, and don't change anything. So that's Article 1. And then all the language that goes along with it to make it so make all the different pieces in the bylaws now reference the table. So Article 1 is kind of its standalone entity in itself. Then Article 2 that's where I consider are the substantive changes. And that's where we are actually doing some strike-throughs, adding a little bit of language here and there to clarify things, getting rid of all the duplicates, and dealing with any inconsistencies, which we did find. And then Article 3 is non-substantive. That is just literally going in, and anywhere there's a blank in the table, putting a no in, because a blank means a no. And anywhere there's SP, it's now SPZB. So Article 3 is not a substantive change. It's just a matter of, now let's complete the table that we built and fill in all the blanks so there's absolutely no question. So nobody misunderstands it. So 2 of the articles are substantive changes, and the third one is
Agreed.
But I disagree. I mean, I know town council wants Article 1 to be substantive, and I guess in reality it is, but we're not changing anything. Except for the fact we're taking all the parts and putting it in one table. And you will see, if you care to take the time to look through it, you will see a lot of duplicates in there that we just don't need. So we, as you can see, Article 1 we broke out into parts. So Part 1 was let's create the table. And then Part 2 was, if I scroll down, so we keep going. I'm just got it on my other monitor. Part 2 is now we're cleaning up some of the references for just relating to different articles. And then 3 through the rest in Article 1 is just all the different language that's required now to have the article point, have the bylaw point to the new table.
Okay.
Are the words Part 2 and et cetera going to be part of the bylaw change? That'll be a part of the...
I can't hear you.
Really? Can you hear me now?
I think I can hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Is the language that says Part 2, et cetera, part of the bylaw? Just, I don't think I've seen language usage like that.
So
Like,
that is
like
a question
Section
that
2?
we're trying to get clarification on how to do this. Because if we don't put some sort of separator in here, it's really hard for anybody to just like if I didn't put some sort of little separator, how do you know where the different language is?
Go ahead.
So, hey, Chad, how are you? So,
Good.
so the document I have, pages 1 through 9, is basically the use table.
Yes.
All right, that's Article 1, use table.
Yep.
Then you get to page 10, use table, Article 2. It seems to be the use table again with changes.
That's right.
So, but some of the changes are like, and I haven't been on the zoning board in over a long time. Some of the changes, like we now have a B3. Do we have a B2 through 4?
Yeah, so in the second one, there's so for example, the B2 doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
So
that was, all right, so
to get rid of that, so you do see that in there, and then get rid of the asterisks, which were referring to other sections of the bylaw, which
Right.
is the different articles. So that's kind of called the header cleanup. That's in Article 2. And then Article 2, breaking down by different use categories, was to really consolidate and merge into one way to say the same thing. We literally took what was in the B1, the C1, the C4, the C6, and put it into that first table in Article 1, and then where everything said there's 5 different ways to say retail sales, we consolidate down to retail sales. We should say, we didn't say in the beginning, sorry. I want to give a lot of credit to the building department to start this process, because it's, I think, hopefully, it's, not to get caught up on words, it's really a consolidation and breaking it down to not say retail sales 5 different ways necessarily.
This might be a request that's impossible to meet, but I'm going to make it anyways. Is town council's working on this? And do you have a budget that they've given you to work with town council on this? Or do you have a council of some sort that's helping you with this? Or is it just all internal?
No, we're doing it. Myself, and the
Okay,
planning board,
it's all internal.
and building department.
All right.
Yeah, so it's been internal.
Is there any way, if this is a monstrous task, which is why I was asking that question, is there any way to do a crosswalk? Change it, where you, this change to this change to this, so I don't have to go through it and look.
yeah, what happened to daycares?
And
Like, daycares got struck. Do they show up somewhere else?
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So if you're consolidating the 8 different definitions of retail, where were they? And now we know where they are, but, you know,
Daycare was here, now it's called something else.
right? Or it's in a different place.
We have that in one of the many, many iterations of this.
Some sort of crosswalk would be helpful.
We did, and then when we started to go through it,
Sorry.
it was.
That's why I asked about that.
Yeah, no, I
So
mean,
we were there, it's just,
it was so hard to explain, or even to see it. It was.
But I'm a,
Visual.
I spent a lot of time doing and reading crosswalks in one of my previous jobs, so that's how I look at bylaw changes and legal
I
changes.
think it's good visually for most
Yeah.
people,
Mm-hmm.
for anyone who's
Just so that
visual.
when I look at the strikeout, I know where it went.
Yeah, so
Instead of have to go, okay, you struck small wastewater treatment facilities as regulated by the town, blah, 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 it's gone. Earlier, Chad, Rich, somebody said that's going to be the cornerstone to the redevelopment of the downtown. Are we not allowed to build or expand on that because it's only allowed in the C4?
Solar just disappeared.
It's not, it's somewhere, but
Where?
so we need to know where.
Yeah,
So
I gotcha.
guess, we need someone be able to say where, like, when we start asking these questions.
Sure.
The other
So-
question, I'm sorry, real quick.
So-
All the use tables I've ever seen, every box has something in it, either a yes or a no or a special permit. And
Right.
Share screen. I don't know.
is that going to happen?
That's Article 3.
That's
He
3.
mentioned that.
That's the third one.
Yeah.
All right, we don't have Article 3.
Okay, Article 3 isn't here for
We
us.
don't have the
so-
text. It stops at the bottom
Oh, it's
of
at the
page.
end. It's just very short.
No, right. It's supposed to be another use table, right?
No, it says where
No.
there is a blank, insert a no.
Yeah, it's just.
So all
it's
the
a
special
statement.
permits are captured.
Oh.
Yeah.
So
So that was a conscious.
you're allowed to do this?
What's that?
You're allowed to do that kind of change?
Yeah, because we're just inserting a no. We're filling out
Okay,
the table
all right.
without having.
Okay.
So one of the iterations to this whole process was that article
Yeah.
with everything filled out.
Yeah.
And it just,
Okay.
visually, it seemed just too much to do.
Will
to
it
try to present it.
ultimately be published with all those boxes filled in?
So the intent was to actually have, it's a handout, but have it as a handout, not on the warrant. So you say, okay, this all gets voted, this is the end product. So people could visually see it, it just wasn't on the warrant.
People should have that before the meeting, though. Because if you're curious about your own business and you can't find it, you're going to be upset. But or you're just to
But
I appreciate what you're saying. It's got to be really complicated. I understand that, but
No, I was curious to see.
But at the
'cause
same time,
the
when-
wastewater is there, I don't know.
But at the same time, when a
Bottom-
specific article is 22 pages,
oh, wait a minute.
if you put it in there and it makes
I
it
see what
22
happened.
pages, people
But
won't read it
These are the kinds of things that
in the
is
warrant.
confusing me, but at least in this case, they're all grouped. There is now a wastewater treatment plant that covers we used to have 3,
Right.
and now we only have 1. Okay.
Yeah, that's the, right.
Where's PV?
PB?
Solar.
Solar.
Where is it?
It is,
Agricultural uses,
It's under, commercial?
commercial.
Commercial solar. Because we don't regulate residential solar. Except to.
Well, but they were, the ground mount was
transportation
taken out
utility
too.
has solar.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do you think that where you are at right now, knowing you still have to present to the select board and get their feedback, knowing that you still have to present your final iteration to your own planning board and get your feedback, and as well as to the advisory board and for us to vote on it, do you think you're going to be ready with this? This is really large. Do you think you're going to be ready for this for spring town meeting? Be honest.
Oh, here's ground mounted.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
AJ.
that's a lot of meetings that you have to have and a lot of
anywhere.
comprehensive work that you have to cover within the next 4 weeks. You have to present to everyone, get their feedback, make those changes, vote with the planning board, all 3 weeks before you have to have it, at least before the warrant gets printed, because you have to have time to come to us, for us to vote, and then we have to have time to vote on it, and then we have to be done by May 1st, because sooner than May 1st. Town meeting is May 17th. We have to be.
I think the 19th of April is when we're looking.
Yeah, we got to be done by the 19th of
And to ask
April. That's
Brian's
a month from now.
Question, to what end?
Are you
You
ready?
come in and give me 5 bullets on why we're going to spend
I think
an
Chad
hour
did a
on
good
this?
job of that. But then you look at this and you get confused.
No, I'm not saying it doesn't need to be done, and I'm not saying that you guys aren't working really, really hard. I'm not saying you're not going to be ready. I'm asking, do you really think you're going to be ready? Or would you rather split your focus, like you're splitting your focus right now between this and the signs for spring? Or would you rather put one for spring and one for fall? And which one is more ready?
Accessory to a
And
commercial
that's the
building.
one, if one is
Commercial building.
logistically more ready, then let's focus on that for spring and then put everything else in the fall. You'll have the whole summer to work on it. That's just my suggestion. If you think you're really ready, and it has nothing to do with how much it's needed or how much you
That's a
want it.
substantive change.
You have to be ready. Bylaws can only be changed once. You don't get another crack at the apple. So if you think you're ready, then let's do the work and let's get through this. But if you really truly don't think you're gonna be ready, then let's wait. Let's get everything done, get the ducks in the row, get your sign stuff passed this spring.
Okay,
That's a big one. That's something that's actually helping the
Susan,
residents and the business
You've made that
people in this
point,
town.
okay? But my follow-up point to that is, council's going to have to review this and approve it, right? Are they aware of that?
Yeah, we've been sending them versions
Okay,
of this.
all right,
already,
and you've
so.
gotten
Yeah.
comments back or not?
Well, so when you say ready, I guess it just depends on what the definition of ready is. I mean, if it's something where you want a full crosswalk, that's a whole nother level.
I
to
was
take
asked,
this
I
through.
understand that, and I was
Yeah.
asking more for nerds, like me. But,
So can I ask,
And me.
what is the risk here? The risk is that there's a typo, right? And that the typo becomes permanent. We combine all these tables, right? There's no other risk because we're not changing anything literally, are we?
we
That's
don't
the
know.
risk.
We don't know.
That's the,
No, I know.
that they are changing something. So
That
ground
we
mounted in
don't know.
here went from,
Unintentionally though, right?
well, I don't know, ground mounted went from accessory use to a residential to an accessory use to a commercial.
So
I
there's a
can't find it in
potential
the
that we
residential.
might debate each
So-
of these terms or something.
don't want to.
I'm asking not because I'm challenging it, I'm trying to understand what we might be focusing on.
Well, and
So,
I'm not saying we're going to do, I'm just throwing this out there as an alternative, is that, Article 1, we could focus on Article 1 and just that creates the table and all the language that supports the table. We could then focus on eliminating the districts that we don't have any land associated with them, so it cleans that up. We could then focus on and then skip the rest of Article 2 for a later date, so we could do more work, and then do Article 3, which fills the rest of the table out with all the no's.
In the fall.
Right, and
I think
so
that's
I'm
a
just-
great
I'm
idea.
just-
You vote on setting up the use table for the spring, which really takes no thought for residents, because all it is saying, sure, go ahead, give us a shot, create a use table, let's see what you got.
Right.
There's no harm in the town approving it. There should be very little discussion about it. Then you go back, and in the fall, you've created the use table, and they can focus on what the actual substantive changes are by creating this use table. And you have the time as the planning board to work on it, and we have the time to review it. And it's also in line with what David would like as his vision as the new chair, is saying, let's try to get back to more budgetary things in the spring and throw in some of the other stuff, obviously, because we do still have normal business in the spring, and then keeping the major bylaw changes for the fall.
That's a policy, I fully agree with you, as I said earlier, but it's not a policy change we can make.
I know that, but I'm saying it's more in line.
It's
I'm saying if this is our
Justin's and the
suggestion.
board's.
I think that's a great compromise.
Justin's and the board's approach.
I think it's a great compromise, is focus on the sign thing for the spring, get the use table set up, and then you have 3 months, 4 months to get all the details done, and we have the ability to focus on that in the fall, because we don't have budgetary discussions. We don't have all these other huge things coming on a big warrant, right? The town won't have so much, their focus won't be as split.
I think,
So to answer 3 questions, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Couple
go ahead.
seconds? All right.
Yeah.
One is the ground mounted solar is in transportation utility uses. So that's where it is across the board.
Right.
But what I was going to say is, I don't want to do that.
No,
for the
I
rest
know.
of our
I'm going to
meeting
answer the
tonight.
question. So, to answer Susan's question, originally, when we had the discussion
Yeah.
was, we had the sense, we think we're ready. However, knowing Article 2 had a lot of moving parts, which was a lot more involved and more open to potential debate and so forth, if we could get one, which is create the consolidated chart, put everything together, and then fill it out with the no's and SP and ZBs, that would be a home run.
Yep.
So to split it, like do that in the spring and go back in the fall, makes a lot of logical sense.
I don't know who
So-
came
be
up
a
with that
really
idea,
long
but it's
meeting
genius. It's genius idea.
So, and in part, that's why we're here.
I'm like, let's go,
So,
genius
yeah,
idea.
And furthermore, the reason
Yeah,
why we're here tonight,
but it is,
to get the
no,
input,
yeah,
make those decisions.
I don't even know if it makes, I'll hold my opinion until, you guys have to go back and talk to the rest of your members anyways, kind of thing, and
I think
I just think I'm looking at the current consolidated table, and it looks silly, because it's got telecommunications, blah, blah, blah.
I know.
And another line that says the exact same thing, and then another line that
know.
says, so I hear I like the outcome, I like the permanent outcome that you're trying to achieve. It's just really complicated, which you've already acknowledged, and your noses have been in this for months, I guess,
10
at this
months,
point.
10, 11, not quite a year, but about 10 months.
And
yeah.
then I have a second question. Did this ever come up as part of the zoning and bylaw changes that we paid a lot of money for 3 years ago?
that wasn't part of their.
No.
It wasn't part of their.
That was
work.
dumb on somebody's part, not anyone in this room.
No.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. No, it seemed like we did other things like that in that
No, we did.
giant
Yeah.
package.
So I think actually, maybe I'm missing something, but I think the question of are you ready seems silly to me because it looks like you are ready. I would actually, I think we could get this done and it would be a little bit clearer if instead of being 1, 2, 3, it was 1, 3, 2, right? Like put it all in one place, fill it out to no's, and then if people don't want to, if they vote against 3, which is now
The
2,
quote-unquote
which is
substitute
the
one,
now
yeah.
3, then that happens, right? But I think what would also clarify it is getting what the final version, if everything in 3 is put in place, and then it'll answer a lot of questions. I actually think the confusion from our committee is that we don't see the final product, quite frankly.
I agree.
I think you've done a huge amount of work
Yeah.
there, and I
No,
actually think
absolutely.
we can get it done in the spring, and there's no need to break it apart.
I mean, I have no problems with you moving forward with it in the spring. I didn't mean to give that impression. I just think that if you can not have your focus split, if you can present it in a concise way that makes it easy for people to understand, versus us sitting at town meeting talking about use table for 3 hours.
You need Melissa to do a
Like,
PowerPoint.
we
for
need to
this.
know.
So
Yeah,
the-
I mean,
well, they have to
not to give Melissa any more work, but I mean, this is kind of what she's good at. This is a
No,
wheelhouse.
well,
the
Chad,
plan is actually to
to
have
be
Chad
honest,
teed up the use
before
table and-
we got into the details, Chad's 5-minute introduction.
100%.
Everything, but then by the time I started getting into Article 3, I'd already forgotten what Chad said, so getting it
That's a
written
good
down
point of
somewhere.
rearranging it. Yeah.
Getting it written
rearranging the
down
order is
somewhere
good,
would be
'cause 3
helpful, but-
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we could.
Most people aren't going to know that we have these little Frankenstein use tables throughout the zoning bylaw, that we
Right.
created over the years. They don't even know that, so they look at the first thing and they're all confused already. So yeah, it's a presentation problem.
Well, and that's why making those changes last are like, it's a presentation fix, because you go, here's this Frankenstein monster, and what you're actually voting on is to clean up.
we're gonna clean this
We're
up.
going to take out all the redundancies and clean it up.
Chad, correct me if I'm thinking about this in a proper manner. It would doing it in a split way, like we were just talking about, saying now, hey, here's the use table. We're going to vote on creating the use table, and then we're going to come back to you with all of the nuts and bolts, for a lack of a better word, in the fall. Isn't that kind of like what we do when we say we want a feasibility study for a new building or a new school or whatever? You're saying, like, don't worry about the end product, just approve us for this part right now, and then you get to see the whole picture in the fall with everything. I mean, it kind of seems like that's the general idea of splitting it, right? I know it's not a feasibility study, that's not what I mean. I'm saying it's that same ideology, it's that same
Splitting the
sort of pattern of, please don't get bogged down in the details right now. Right now, you're just voting on, let me create it. And then if you don't like what I've created, you don't have to say yes. There's no danger. So it's equivalent to a feasibility study. Obviously, feasibility studies cost money, blah, 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 blah. But that's not what I mean. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
No, I understand what you're saying. I mean, and that's why we broke it up into 3 articles. Because the first one is create it as is, and you can then clearly see all the issues.
Yeah.
And then 2 was fix it. And then 3 was just a final cleanup. But I agree that 3 is so small and non-substantive.
It
Move
should
to
be
2.
just done. Just do
Yeah.
it. Just type in no and SP.
Yeah. and then we do have a final product with that shows everything, and we thought about putting that in when we did Article 2, but the table got very, very busy and cluttered, and it was hard to see then the strike-throughs and anything that was bold. So that's why we opted to not do it, because it just made it very cumbersome to look at it even in a Word document. So I could even imagine it's even worse in a warrant article if it's hard to see in Word. So
I guess. Oh, go ahead, Rich.
We were trying to build, so when we were here last, in August last year, when it was like 47 articles.
Yeah.
I did break it down a lot, so it was really clear, but then the concern was there was so much. So we tried to go between that and this to try to make it consumable.
It's a hard sell.
So what I would
it's a bear.
suggest, 2 things, and it may not resolve your ultimate problem. Can I see that? Because I'm sure I have the paperwork somewhere, but that exists, right?
Oh, from
Yeah.
last year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you guys have to decide how you're going to go forward, because we've given you our input, and you can do with it as you wish. You may come back and have us be not happy with it, but that's the reality of the situation. Brian did make a good point that the work is all here. It's just the presentation has to be
Right.
And if you
fixed.
guys, yeah.
If you did a slideshow and showed the 3 current use tables, like this is the one that's in this and this is this, they're now all here. But you'll notice that there are 3, whatever I said, wastewater treatment plants. And I mean, that's a way to get people to understand what the second table actually is. There is, Rob is going through trying to find where you've lost stuff. And he'll find them, but, or change stuff that isn't worded the exact same or something like that. And those are what I consider to be substantive changes.
So, it's, so for jerks like me, like where it says schools, including business and trade schools, that disappeared out of public and semi-public uses, but it went in somewhere else. You just have to be able to say where it went, and even maybe like a 4th, it's, I don't know, 9th column that says, this is where it went. I don't know, that's kind of the way I would do it.
Rewrite them from start.
So anyways, I think you've heard.
Let's do a charter.
I think you've heard, does anyone have anything they want to
I
add
think
before?
maybe that, in terms of maybe part of the presentation, we could do that, not within the,
Right.
the warrant, but,
Yeah.
no, I get where you're, because some things have been moving.
Right, yeah, they moved from like
Yeah.
chunks to other chunks,
Right.
which I think is where I got all
That's why I
wrapped
wanted
around
the
the axle on a
crosswalk,
couple
and
of them.
I understand it's an impossible task, and would be illegible, because it would have too many lines, but,
Okay.
But come back to us when you've got a better sense of what's going on. We're, just to let you know, next week we have the main budget presentation, and then I'm hoping the schools are the week after, so a couple weeks out at the earliest, is what I'm saying, we have a schedule that I'll get to you. I'll talk to Erica, because we kind of set it, I don't have my notes in front of me, but we'll set up some time towards the end of our process.
So the plan going into tonight was, to meet tonight, go over the discussion, is to hold a hearing. They're going to have a hearing at the end of March,
Yep.
so come back in April.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have 2 or 3 meetings in April, and like I said, Erica, I'll have to get it from you and send it to these guys, because I can't remember when they are. I've got it in my...
It should be in Brian's
I've got it in my work
minutes.
computer at home. Oh, it's in Brian's minutes. Good point. Or Erica's minutes that Brian's approving. All right, so we'll work on getting that on the agenda.
4:12 is our voting meeting, going to the minutes,
I think we somehow pushed
with a
that.
backup to 4:19.
No, and then we had to turn in our
4/19
recommendations
is
by the
the
19th.
turn-in date, so we'll talk about it. We've got to have 2 meetings and maybe 3 in April, so. Okay? And thank you. And it is a valuable exercise, it's just confusing.
I think you guys did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chad, for all your work, hard work. Thank you,
Welcome.
Melissa, for all yours, and Rich, as always. Thank you.
And I can understand why Bob was the driver on this, too, because he's the one who gets all the questions on the use tables, so.
That makes sense to put in one place.
Yeah.
Just some of us are grumpy about spring zoning articles, and I apologize for that.
So thank you. And I think we're all done with this, and we can move on to minutes.
Yes. So I did forward everyone the minutes. I looked through and there were no edits needed to the
Okay.
draft. It was a quick summary of our plan of how we're going to handle this spring.
Great.
I move the minutes be approved as submitted.
Second.
All in favor? Yeah, thank you, Kiara. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
You have to roll call. We have
Oh, thank you, sorry. Yeah. Kiara Moore,
Hi.
Susan Klein,
Aye.
Joyce Terrio.
Aye.
Brian Beachkowski.
Aye.
Michael G.
Aye.
Rob Gary.
Yes.
Jonathan Hurwitz.
Aye.
David Lutz, aye. We have adopted the minutes. I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, we're out of here.
Mike, is it G or D?
It's G.
So I pronounced it wrong for almost a year and you didn't tell
Never
me?
got a chance to get a word in on that.
I am so sorry. Why would you not have told me? I'm completely embarrassed.
No,